Christian morality, when you strip it from the pagan philosophies that it borrowed from and grandfathered in, is do as I say or you're bad. That's a very large part of why I ended up leaving the church and found any notion that Christianity was the moral foundation for the Western world. You look at Genesis. What sin did Adam and Eve commit? It wasn't murder, it wasn't theft, it wasn't any of the things that we would want to destroy someone for in the modern day. It was disobedience. They were given free will, they were told not to eat an apple, and they did. And apparently, the only valid use of free will is to do exactly what you're told. I can't think of anyone who is loving toward another being that would give said being free will and then punish them for using it. At least no one that isn't a narcissist or a sociopath. Even when it comes to the crucifixion, the idea that God is all-knowing, is perfect, is above everything. He makes the rules. He is goodness. He decides what justice is. He loves humanity, and he wants to forgive humanity for the sin of disobeying him. But the only way he can do that is through the blood sacrifice of a perfect man. Now, this can only mean one of two things. There is either a higher principle than him, which means that he's not almighty. He doesn't make the rules. Even he is beholden to something else. And that something else requires blood to be shed in order to save any portion of humanity from being damned forever. Or he just likes blood, even if it's his own. I was given countless examples as a child of how Jesus' sacrifice was like someone standing trial for murder and someone in the jury standing up and offering to fulfill their sentence, which never made sense to me, because why would you ever let a murderer go free? How would this be considered good? How would this be considered just? An innocent person is rotting in prison, whereas the murderer's probably going to do it again if they're actually guilty. So if everything boils down to because I said so, then this problem of morality, this problem of good and evil that Christians say that God solves, it doesn't solve it. It just puts everything in the hands of one guy. And because one guy says so, doesn't resolve anything. And even when it comes to the Old Testament morality, yeah, there's precedent throughout the entire Torah that this is very much how the Israelites saw it. You look at Moloch. Everybody is so afraid of Moloch in the modern world, but there's no evidence that a being named Moloch was ever venerated in the times that those texts were written. There is evidence to point to a certain kind of sacrifice called the Moloch being detestable in the Israelites' eyes. But it wasn't detestable because it was human sacrifice. It was detestable because it was a form of sacrifice that was different from their own and that didn't honor or serve their God. Even the story of Abraham, there's older versions of it where Abraham came down the mountain without Isaac in tow, which implies that nobody and nothing stopped him from carrying out his instructions, and there wasn't a problem with that. And this isn't calling Christians sociopaths. I didn't put that at the front of the video because, frankly, anybody who actually needs me to say that isn't going to listen to anything else that I have to say either. They're going to take everything out of context. I'm only saying it here now as an assurance for those of you who are open-minded enough to listen to the perspective of someone from outside your faith, which kudos to you for that. I applaud open-mindedness, and I wish that we had more open discussion. I want to assure you that I'm not judging you personally. That there's a lot of lovely Christians out there, Catholic, evangelical, and otherwise. But in terms of the actual underlying foundation of good and evil within the moral system that the majority of Christians hold to, it's extremely flimsy. It crumbles at the slightest bit of examination. And it's a very large part of why people who either never were Christians or who have grown up that way and left the faith look at it the way that we do.